So this session will be recorded and it will be available to you. We'll send the recording out to you in an email. You'll also be able to view this on YouTube. I've been posting these on YouTube. Just a quick introduction. Like I said, I'm from the Center for Technology and Training. My name is Ingrid Sandberg. We've been doing several of these. This is the third session this fall. So if you're curious about, what the other sessions were like, they are available on YouTube if you want a refresher, or if you want to show this to one of your colleagues. Hopefully not in a passive aggressive way, hopefully in an educational way. This is Zoom. Closed captions are available. You can turn those on. There should be in the bar at the bottom of your Zoom window. You might have to click on more or like 3 dots or something to get that up. But if you need closed captions, those are available to you. Please feel free to use the chat and the Q&A. The Q&A allows you to ask questions anonymously. The chat, obviously, your name will be associated with it. Mentimeter is anonymous. I'll be asking questions using Mentimeter throughout today's session. And so I encourage you to participate in it. I'll put the instructions to join up again here in just a moment. The certificate of attendance. So if you'd like a certificate of attendance for today's session, I'll be putting a SurveyMonkey link into the Zoom chat at the very end of today's session. You'll be able to fill that out and we'll email you a certificate of attendance in a day or two. I have heard from our event staff that they're trying to make sure that they get all of these out before Christmas. We will be off next week as well as we come back on the 2nd. So we're here next Monday and then we are off until January 2nd. So if you don't get something before Christmas, your email won't be answered for a little bit, but we will get back to you, I promise. The slides will also get sent out in an email to you, along with, like I said, the link to today's recording, as well as the link to the YouTube page and some other information for you. All right, so let's get moving and into the good stuff. Let me turn my camera off so you can get a hold of that QR code again. If you've got a smartphone, please join with that, or you can open up another browser window if that's easier for you. You can go to menti.com and type in that 8-digit code, menti.com, and the code will be available on top of every single slide. Like I said, Menti is anonymous, so you can answer honestly, and I cannot trace this back to you in any way. You should also be able some of the questions will be typed in answer questions, and some of them will be multiple choice. So if it's easier for you to type on your computer, go ahead and join via computer. And we'll give you just another couple of seconds to get that squared away. If you are joined, if you want to hit that thumbs up button, that lets me know how many people are in the session, and that is helpful. Awesome. Looks like most of us have gotten that. If you need any help with that, let us know and we can assist you. I did just put into the Zoom chat also a link to the Menti session if that is easier for you. All right. So, quick agenda for today's meeting. We're going to talk a little bit about some meeting roles, different roles that people might be in, take during a meeting, and also how to make your meetings more effective both before, during, and then after your meeting. So, jumping right into this is our first Menti question. Which of these tasks do you do regularly? Do you plan meetings? Do you attend meetings? Or are you running meetings? And you should be able to answer more than one for this question. I know sometimes folks are planning meetings that they don't end up attending. If you might be in an admin role, that might be something that you're doing. And sometimes people are running meetings that they are not planning, which there are some challenges to all of these. And then there's also challenges if you're doing all 3 of these things, if you're planning the meetings and attending it and running it. Nobody escapes. Everybody's got it hard here. All right, so it looks like we're pretty well distributed. Everybody's attending meetings, but we're kind of split a little bit between running and planning. Not everybody necessarily is doing those 2 activities. So as we go through today, we will be talking about some tips for all of these. So to jump in right away, this is a type in your answer kind of question. But what makes a meeting inefficient, right? I'm sure that all of us have at one time or another attended a meeting that was not efficient, and you felt like you left it without feeling like you accomplished much. So what are some of the things that might make a meeting not so efficient? So thank you for participating here. We got some No agendas, lack of agenda, lack of preparedness, too much off-topic conversations. Yes, for sure. Those are some things. Too many interruptions. Yes. What else do we got? Starting late. Yep. That for sure can make things inefficient. Leaving with more questions than answers. Yeah, not feeling like you actually got any decisions made or anything. You came to the meeting with the intent to make some decisions and you didn't actually get that done. What else? Nobody's taking charge. Attendees interrupting or having side conversations. Too much socializing. No clear scope. Too much personal talk. Yeah, these are all things, especially I think the way that some of our work is, sometimes we don't see folks until we have a meeting, and so you want to catch up with people. That can definitely be a challenge, especially if you're trying to run a meeting, or sometimes you don't have time for this. I have this amount of time blocked off for my meeting, and half of it gets eaten up with socializing. Even if you are happy to socialize, you have not accomplished whatever it was that you were trying to do. So if you've attended a productive meeting, what made that meeting productive? Good back and forth discussion. Yeah, a lot of times a meeting that is going to be really productive has a really nice flow to the conversation. People feel comfortable sharing things. Being prepared, yes. Having a clear purpose, that's a great point. A clear objective also, and clear outcomes. Leaving with clear action items. I really like that one. Thank you for whoever put that one in. Knowing, a meeting could be productive, but then the follow-up to the meeting is just as important. Let's see, following the agenda, full coffee heaters. Yes, that's definitely going to help on productivity, especially the earlier that meeting is going to be, right? Proactive information available in advance. Yeah, did you give me enough time to review whatever I was supposed to review so that I could be prepared? Having that clear agenda, having time for questions, I like that a lot. Respecting everybody's time. And yeah, having the ability to prepare for meetings. You might have great intentions about coming as an attendee to a meeting and being prepared, but if folks haven't given you the information that you need ahead of time, it can be really tough. All right, thank you. All right, we will talk more about these as we go through, I promise. I appreciate you guys participating. So how about this one? This is a multiple choice question. Which of these is a good reason to have a meeting? And we've got a lot of choices here. You should be able, again, choose more than one. Our choices here are coordinating with others. Is that a good reason to have a meeting? Sharing an update. Maybe you're having a meeting so that you can gather some information. Maybe you are having a meeting so you can brainstorm some things or problem solve some things. Maybe you're seeking some input from folks, and that's why you've called this meeting. Or you're trying to make a decision about something. Or maybe you're making an announcement. All right, so it looks like we've got some, most folks are saying, coordinating and seeking input and brainstorming are all really good reasons. That seems to be universally, as across all of the sessions that I've taught, those ones seem to be most popular. Coordinating for sure. I would say that all of these are potentially good reasons to have a meeting, but I would agree with you saying that making an announcement and then sharing an update, not necessarily a great reason to have a meeting. There are some instances when it might be. So if you are making an announcement that you anticipate is going to have a lot of pushback or a lot of questions about it, maybe it's not a popular announcement that you're making. It's not like, hey, free pizza in the break room. It's, hey, everybody, we are going to have to downsize. That is not maybe something that should go out just in an email. Maybe we have a meeting to talk about that. If you're sharing an update, though, that can often be more effective both in some kind of written form because it's something that people can refer back to. But even some of these other ones that you guys said could be good reasons to having a meeting, like seeking input, that can be a good reason to have a meeting, but you could also seek input in different ways, right? So let's talk a little bit about some of these reasons to have a meeting. So a meeting, this is a definition from dictionary.com. A meeting is an assembly or conference of persons for a specific purpose. And so I think one of the most important things when we're talking about having a meeting is there a specific purpose? Is there an outcome or a goal that we are trying to accomplish by having this meeting? And if there is not, why are we having this meeting? If you are attending a meeting, if you are planning a meeting, if you are running a meeting, you should understand what the goal of that meeting is going to be. So what are we doing? Is this meeting even necessary? Right? There's the joke of this meeting could have been an email. And I think we've all experienced that where you leave the meeting and you're like, well, that was a half an hour or maybe an hour or maybe more of my time that could have been summarized in like 4 sentences in an email. So knowing what that specific purpose of your meeting is, and not calling a meeting until you do know, is important. So what are some other things that we can do? So we could, instead of a meeting, what if we just had a phone call, right? So what if I have a question for maybe 1 or 2 people? I can just call them. I can just make a conference call. This doesn't need to involve a lot of people. Uh, it could be an email maybe, and sometimes an email is better because then you have that written record that people can refer back to. Sometimes maybe we don't want a written record of whatever a conversation is, so maybe it should be a phone call. Maybe it's a memo, like something that is going to be an announcement, or an update. Maybe that needs to be a memo that can then, be tacked on the fridge or put on a bulletin board, in a break room, where people can refer back to it. And maybe if, they're in and out of the office, that is a little bit more convenient for everybody. They don't have to take time out of their schedule. Maybe it needs to be a survey. Like I said, if you're seeking input, a survey can be really helpful. And maybe then there is a subsequent follow-up meeting to discuss the results of that survey. But if you are just seeking input, a survey can be more effective for that, both because it's more convenient for people to do, when they can maybe really think about what their answers to that is, to the questions might be. But it's also can be better because they might be more honest, especially if the survey is an anonymous one. You might get more accurate results if you send out a Google form or a SurveyMonkey link, or some other form of polling. It could, a poll could even just be, drop a piece of paper in whichever bucket you choose. This is another thing. Maybe your meeting doesn't need to be in its own separate meeting. Maybe it just needs to be an agenda item at an existing meeting, and you don't have to call an entirely separate meeting because all of the people that need to be involved in this discussion are already going to be at this other meeting, and it relates to that meeting anyways. I think that is also an underutilized option. And then the last one is that maybe this needs to be a shared editable document, right? So potentially if you are trying to coordinate with other people, especially if you are spread out over more than one location, having a shared document, whether that's in Microsoft 365 or if it's a Google document, something like that, where multiple people can share and edit and see it all at the same time, that can be really helpful to coordinate things, especially if things are moving targets, right? So I'm sure you as well have had meetings where everything is set in stone and then something happens, the weather changes, or equipment breaks down or what have you. And now the whole plan that we had all set up in the meeting is awash. That's not what's going to happen. So having something that you can update in real time can be really helpful in that instance. I also want to mention that a lot of us might have updates that we're either giving to a supervisor, or you might be the supervisor receiving updates, and having a meeting where everybody gives their update can potentially be helpful and useful, a useful use of everybody's time. But that's only the case if everybody's work kind of interacts with one another. If everybody's work is pretty siloed and isn't going to impact other people, it might be more effective for each person to give their update one-on-one to that supervisor, as opposed to having a big group meeting where one person is giving their update and the rest of the people in the room are just kind of there and not their need to be there is not really relevant. All right, so who should be at this meeting? This would be another aspect of this. You want to make sure that if you are attending a meeting or if you are inviting people to a meeting, that they actually really need to be there. So when you clarify whatever your role is at the meeting, this is a great way to kind of figure that out. What is each person at the meeting going to be doing to achieve whatever the outcome is that you want, whatever the goal, whatever the purpose of this meeting is? How does each person that's going to be at that meeting, how do they get us closer to that goal? And sometimes I know it can be difficult. Sometimes we might not want to offend other people because somebody might get their nose a little bent out of shape if they're not invited to a meeting. There's strategies to help with that. You can make sure that they get meeting minutes or update or action items, include them on follow-up conversations, follow-up emails. Also, sometimes we might want to include somebody because we just want to keep them in the loop. Again, include them in some of those communications, but they don't necessarily have to be at the actual meeting. All right, so we've decided that we need a meeting. We have a specific goal in mind for whatever our meeting is going to be. And we have decided, why we need those specific people there, who's going to be attending this meeting. Now, let's talk a little bit about where should we have this meeting. So before the meeting, we want to have some pre-planning to this. Success is definitely going to favor those of us who are prepared. So let's talk a little bit about this before the meeting session. Meeting attendees, again, you need to make sure that you have communicated, if you are the person planning that meeting, what is the person's role? What do you want them to do at this meeting? What is their requirements for attending this meeting? You want to think as well about whether these meeting attendees are internal people or if you are bringing people external from your company or from your agency into this meeting, because there may be some other factors there. You want to think about everybody's schedule, right? One of our directors here has a peeve that meetings should not be scheduled during lunch if you are not providing lunch. And I agree with that full-throatedly. I do apologize that since this is a virtual meeting, I cannot provide you lunch. If I could figure out a way to make it happen, I definitely would. I do appreciate all of you spending your lunch hour with me. We want to also think about locations. So maybe you've got most of the attendees are going to be in one location, and you just got a couple of people. Let's have the meeting in wherever it's going to be most efficient for folks. So that might mean that you, as the planner or the person who's going to be running this meeting, you might have to be the one that travels as opposed to making a bunch of people come to you. We also want to think about availability, sometimes starting with whoever has the most difficult schedule, right? Sometimes folks, like for example, our director, Tim Calling, his schedule is packed most of the time. So if I have a meeting and Tim needs to be at that meeting, I start with his schedule and then we work around and try and figure out when can we get everybody else to work, schedules to work. So this is kind of what I was just discussing was a little bit more about if you are somebody who's planning that meeting, but how about as an attendee? How do you ask, why am I invited to this in a polite way? This is one of those questions. I'm sure all of us have experienced this where you've gotten a meeting invite and you're like, what? I don't know why I have to go to, why am I being asked to go to it? And it can be a little bit difficult to ask in a way that doesn't make it sound like, because maybe you actually do need to be at this meeting. But it can be a little bit difficult to figure out how to phrase this. Did you mean to invite me to this meeting? Depending on how outlandish the invite is, that might be a good way to ask. Am I in the right room? Maybe. Let's see. Does anybody else have maybe some softer ways to ask this? Trying to clarify meeting agenda to verify if your attendance is needed. Yes. Can you send me an agenda is maybe a good way. What do you need from me? Is there an agenda? Yep, those are good ones. Are there items I should have prepared? Can you clarify your expectations for my participation in this meeting? That's a great soft way to ask this. Next time, just email me, maybe. Can you estimate the priority of this meeting? Yeah, sometimes that can be clarifying the priority of a meeting because maybe you have other conflicts, right? And you're like, hey, if this is something that is has more priority, maybe I can shuffle some other things around. How about what is the goal of this meeting? That's a really kind of neutral way to ask and help to clarify what your role might be. Also, just asking, hey, what is my role in this meeting? That's again a fairly neutral way to ask, why am I being invited to this? And then the other one that I really like is, how can I prepare? And I think somebody did mention that one. How can I prepare for this meeting? Because that's going to give you an idea of what is being expected of you. And it also kind of, that's probably my favorite, is how can I prepare for this meeting? Because it kind of puts it on the meeting, the person who invited you, the person who's planning or running this meeting, to tell you what it is that they want from you. And then it also gives you the option to say, if they say, nothing, I just thought you might be interested, you can say, can you send me the follow-up after this meeting? Or, I would love to know more about this, but I don't have time in my schedule. Send me follow-up information afterwards. Send me some meeting minutes or some, um, um, yeah, maybe this last one, why have you disturbed my sanctum of serenity with this pointless blather? Maybe we don't go there. Maybe we ask, how can I prepare for this meeting? What is my role? Or what's the goal of this meeting? Because that kind of does put it back on whoever invited you to clarify those things. And those are all a fairly neutral way to ask those, where hopefully that person is not going to, it still shows that you have an interest in what the meeting is, because it is possible that you've missed some conversations that happened, and you actually do want to be involved in this meeting, and it gives you that opportunity to be involved, but also kind of gives you a way to have an out. All right, so when we're talking about communications, if you are the person who is planning this meeting, you need to communicate what is the intent of this meeting, what are the roles, what is each person going to be asked to do with this meeting, as well as if you have special things that you might be asking, like, hey, there's an agenda item that I would like you specifically to give some information about, to give an update about, etc. Preparedness. You want to make sure that you have shared any materials for review, the agenda, etc., with folks with enough lead time that they actually have time to review whatever it is. So if you have a 500-page document, you can't send that to people the morning of the meeting and expect anybody to have actually looked at it. If you do have a situation, we've all been there, right, where it's like, woof, this meeting, we have to have it right now. There is some stuff that people need to review. Clarifying exactly, there's a 500-page document. There's probably only a few pages, especially depending on people's specialties, that one individual, like as a whole, we might all need to review this document, but there's probably only certain sections that are relevant for each person. So saying, hey, X person, can you review these pages? Y person, can you review these pages, etc. This is what I'm asking from each person to kind of both clarify and make it a little bit more approachable. If you send me an email with 2 hours before the meeting with some enormous document and tell me to review it with no other information, I probably am going to just keep working on whatever else I'm working on, right? But giving some specifics about what it is that you're looking for can help people actually prioritize whatever it is that you're asking for. If you make a giant unreasonable ask, they're a little bit less likely to help you out with that. And then the last one is in terms of preparedness, what to bring. If this is going to be a working meeting where you expect like some collaboration to be happening, etc., you need to let people know, like, you need to bring a laptop, or you need to bring your phone, or maybe it's a scheduling meeting. Bring your schedule, bring your personal schedule, as well as whatever other things that you're working on, because we're going to try and schedule a bunch of things out in advance. The other thing too is with these communications, letting people know what to expect in terms of once they get there. So meeting location, when you're selecting whatever that meeting location is, it needs to be functional for whatever it is the goal of your meeting is. If you're having a working meeting, you need enough space for people to spread out their stuff. It needs to be comfortable, it needs to be convenient for everybody, and it also needs to be safe. And we'll talk about what those things mean. So in terms of a functional meeting, it needs to accommodate whatever your needs are. So if you need to be able to show people a bunch of documents, having a projector or a TV screen or something that everybody can look at it the same way, or maybe making sure that everybody's going to have a laptop or a tablet or something that they can view everything on. Especially if you're doing hybrid meetings where some of the folks might be in the room, some of the folks might not be in the room. It's really important to make sure that you've got that technology nailed down. If you know, again, like if you need a big table to work on. And then the last piece with this functionality is if you're discussing something that's going to be maybe a little bit confidential or private, making sure that that room is somewhere where that is actually accomplishable. It might mean that you take your meeting off site from whatever your agency or organization is. All right. So you also need your meeting to have some level of comfort, right? You need to have enough space for everyone. You need to be cognizant of the temperature, especially I know our offices here at CTT are in Dillman Hall, which is a very old building that is on campus. And so our conference room sometimes can get a little warm. It can get a little cold. And we have some, we have a space heater we can bring in. We have an air conditioner that kind of works. So making sure that the room is comfortable, because if people are really freezing cold, it's going to be kind of difficult for them to get stuff done. And if people are really hot, that's like a negotiation type tactic, right? You sweat them out. People are going to get crankier they're in a really hot room. They're going to be less collaborative. It is not going to be conducive to your meeting. The other thing too to consider is, again, a lot of times we're in older buildings. The airflow in that room might not be so great. A lot of times you've got a conference room that's got no windows, right? You shut the door on that thing. Sometimes it's got, limited ductwork. I worked in an office where we did, in theory, have ductwork into the room, but during some cleaning duct cleaning that had happened, some baffles and things had gotten shut, and so in actuality, there was no airflow into that room. And it did not take very long to have a group of people in that room working before everybody is just like a little tired, a little sluggish. And that is the result of, you start to build some CO2, some carbon dioxide up in a room, and people get dumber. It's like scientific fact. You will get stupider, you will get sleepy, and you probably also will get a little bit grouchy. Not the best in terms of trying to make decisions or trying to work with one another. Again, comfort, making sure that if you have a really long meeting that you have scheduled breaks. So with our webinars, I really try and stick to not making you guys sit in a webinar for more than, about 50 minutes before we take a break and we stretch. This one, obviously, we're going to go the full hour, but making sure that you do plan in some breaks for folks to get up, to stretch, to use the restroom, to get a cup of coffee, etc. And then again, if you're going to have a really long meeting, making sure that you have some refreshments for people, or if, that's not in the budget, and I totally understand that sometimes that's just not possible. Like if you're going to have a meeting that's going to go through lunch and you expect folks to like go off site for lunch, letting everybody know ahead of time that that is kind of going to be the expectation for things. So when we talk about convenience, travel distance is a factor. Many of us in this particular group are in Michigan, so time of year, time of day. During the winter time, some winter travel, you want to make sure that folks, if at all possible, people are traveling the least as they can. So maybe you offer a meeting hybrid during the winter time, and in the summer we do have folks travel if it's a recurring meeting. The other thing too I've run into myself with parking is going to another location and you have no idea, there's a gate or something and you're like, how do I get in there? What's the right door? So making sure people understand, or, if it's a downtown urban environment, is there street parking? Am I getting my parking validated? What's going on? Making sure that that is communicated to people, especially people who are external to your organization. It's just a courtesy. And then in terms of safety, so, maybe this is a meeting that we're having on a construction site, right? So do people need to bring their own PPE, or is that going to be provided for them? And also considering who it is that I'm inviting to my meeting. If I've got a group of foremen and superintendents coming to my meeting, they probably have their own PPE. If I have a group of financial managers or administrative folks coming, they might not have their own PPE. I might need to provide some stuff. And then even if it's somebody who might normally have, normal PPE, right? Hard hat, safety glasses, vest, etc. If you've ever been on a project where life jackets were required because you were over water or near water, that's generally not something that people just have, in their truck, right? So that might be something that you have to provide yourself. So are you expecting everybody to provide that stuff, or are you going to provide that, making sure that that's communicated to folks? As a host, in terms of being prepared for your meeting. So do you have all of the meeting materials that you're going to provide in that meeting? Have you sent those out beforehand, or are you going to let people know, hey, don't worry about printing this off. I'll have copies for you when you get here? Again, the technology. Do you understand how to use the technology, and are you comfortable using it? So this is another piece where maybe you recruit another person who their role at the meeting is to help you with the technology because you are presenting some information, or you're going to be running the meeting. So maybe you have a sidekick who helps you out with the technology to make sure that the people who are maybe hybrid and on the virtual platform are also included, and that they can see and hear, etc. Whether you're using Zoom or Teams, making sure you understand all of the settings and maybe some of the cool features, right, that you can use to make, using a whiteboard to collaborate with folks, etc. Again, making sure that the physical space is set up, and then assigning some roles to people, having somebody who takes meeting minutes, having maybe an assistant for things, like if you have an organization where you have to be buzzed in to get into the building, making sure that somebody is going to greet people as they come in. Or if your building is a giant maze, to try and figure out where the conference room is, having somebody who is going to be on the lookout for folks who come in and look very lost. Hey, are you here for the meeting? It's back there. Just making sure that people kind of feel comfortable when they come to an in-person meeting. And a note when we're talking about meeting minutes. So meeting minutes are something that oftentimes, in my experience, they get assigned to a junior level person. This happened to me multiple times where I was the newest person on the team, and it was like, oh, take meeting minutes because, and there is some value to that, right? Because it does kind of get you up to speed a little bit faster. But I will caution one thing is that you want to make sure that whoever is going to be taking the meeting minutes does have a good understanding of what the project is, terminology for the project, or whatever the goal for this meeting is, terminology for this, and then as well as knowing who all of the people are, because this happened to me several times where I was taking meeting minutes and I was like, I think that's from context. I think his name is Bob. I don't know. Or, I think I know what company that guy's from. Or an acronym where I'm like, I don't know what that acronym is. I will do my best here. And then the other piece too, to let new staff know if they are taking meeting minutes, is that meeting minutes are capturing broad strokes of the meeting. They're capturing action items, they're capturing decisions that are made throughout this meeting, but you're not a stenographer, right? And especially because a lot of the times we might not want all of the discussion to be captured in perpetuity forever. There may be some disagreements that might happen during this meeting, or there might be maybe, we've all had a brain fart where we say something that it was just like, I don't want everyone to read that forever and ever. Making sure that that is also conveyed, that you're not a stenographer, these are meeting minutes. And I did mean to say at the very beginning of this that all of this applies to kind of more informal meetings, not like a public meeting. So public meetings are their own whole thing, right? Where they're like, you have to motion to bring things up. You have to motion to close a discussion about a topic, etc. There are specific rules about how those types of meetings have to be conducted, and I don't want folks to get too confused about that. There are specific requirements for what those meeting minutes need to have in them as well. So I don't want folks to get confused with that. This is for meetings that are more informal meetings, project meetings, etc., not a public meeting. All right, so when we talk about communications, you want to make sure that you send that agenda out for people. You want to send that out as soon as possible so people have time to be prepared and they understand what their roles are going to be. You want to make sure that people know where this meeting is going to be, and those considerations for external attendees who might be new to coming to your agency or your organization, gates, detours, a map, sending folks a map or some pictures about this is what it looks like. This is the door that you need to go to. planning those refreshments and meals, and then again, making sure they understand those requirements or expectations. Maybe you're going to start the meeting at one location and then you're planning to drive to another location. All right, are we all taking our own cars, or we can only fit 4 cars once we get there? People are going to have to bundle in. That can be helpful because, I'm sure that many of you have had the experience where you're like, oh, I've been on a project site for weeks at a time, and the back seat of my vehicle has project plans, and it's got, PPE, and I need to do a little bit of tidying before other people are going to fit in this car because there's tools and there's just stuff everywhere, right? Because you did not expect that you were going to be ferrying people back and forth. So having that, again, like, does anybody volunteer to transport some people? And then also, those expectations, do you expect people to bring a laptop and a tablet? And then do you have power supply for folks once they get there? All right. During the meeting, let's talk a little bit about during the meeting. What are some good rules for meeting etiquette for the meeting host? So as a host, what are some etiquette rules for conducting a meeting that you think are important? And this is another Menti question that you should be able to type your answers in. So there are some expectations, I think, as an attendee that we have for the host. Staying on topic is definitely one, that you are going to run this meeting and that you are going to, not running over time, that you're going to run the meeting, that you're going to keep people on topic, that you're going to know what the topic is, right? That you are going to know your stuff, that you are going to keep the meeting on schedule and on topic. Introductions is a great one. I love that somebody mentioned that, because that is a huge thing, especially if you have people who are new to this team, right? Sometimes people sub out, right? Maybe somebody is now working on a different project. They've been sent somewhere else, especially in the consulting world. You might have worked on a project, but now you are in Ohio now, and you are no longer coming to this meeting. So someone has subbed in. Have you introduced everybody to this new person? And do people kind of know both who they are, what agency or organization they're representing, and kind of what their role is at this meeting? Keeping things encouraging participation. Yes. So sometimes you might have somebody in your meeting that you need to kind of maybe not cut off, but you want to make sure that they don't dominate that meeting. And then you might not have other people that you have to kind of work a little bit to pull some information out of them. I like the idea of building in some time for networking. That's great, because then you do have that idea of, hey, we don't see each other that often and we do want to socialize because I like you guys. So have we built in a little bit of time where we get to chit chat, maybe before the meeting, maybe after the meeting? Seating placement, yeah, that can be really important. Making sure that everybody feels like they have an equal place. I don't know if you've ever been at a meeting where there were, 8 chairs around a table, and then there was like 10 and 11, 12 people. So you got people who are sitting against the wall or standing or whatever. Maybe we should have picked a different place for this meeting. Referring questions that you may not know to folks who know how to answer them, that is great. Managing those off-topic conversations, that's another piece. So this is something I do want to put in a little plug here. We are planning to do a couple of trainings specifically about this topic, specifically about meeting facilitation. We're going to be doing those in this coming winter, spring, like February and March. And then we also are doing a couple of sessions that will be specifically about managing a meeting that is a little bit more contentious. Maybe it's a meeting that going into it, oof, this one's going to be a doozy. People they're hot under the collar about stuff. Or maybe it's a meeting where during the meeting, yikes, something popped off and people are arguing now. How do you manage some of those types of situations? So we'll be doing those. There'll be 2 sessions of each of those. So you'll have a couple of chances to attend those. And those will be starting in February and then into March. I think the last one is April 1st, April Fool's Day. So as a host, you should respect people's time. Many of you posted that. Yes, respecting people's time, starting the meeting on time, keeping on schedule as you're going through. This can be difficult because you are trying to guide that discussion, right? Sometimes you don't want to knock a discussion back, but that means that when you are planning out your meeting, to make sure that you leave enough time for each agenda item, so that you don't have to feel like discussion needs to be cut off. The other piece of this too is that you may have you may have a meeting where two people are having a conversation. It's a productive conversation, but it needs to not be happening right now. And so being able to handle that as well. Making everybody feel welcome and feeling like their participation is appreciated and wanted. So, you called these people to this meeting for a reason. Making sure that you do your best to have them be heard. And then following up after the meeting. This is another piece that is important as a host, that you follow up with everybody after that meeting, and maybe with some of those folks who you didn't invite to the meeting, but who had some interest in whatever the topic is. All right, what are some good rules for meeting attendees? So as a meeting attendee, what are some things that, as a host, I expect my meeting attendees to blank. You should be able to type your answers in for this one as well. Listen, yes. There's the saying, right, that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should do twice as much listening as talking. Making sure that folks are listening to one another. Limiting those side conversations, right? If it is something that like I said, sometimes those are productive conversations, but it's like, let's set a time for after this meeting to continue this talk. Participating, yeah, don't just sit there like a bump on a log. You need to be involved in whatever this meeting is going to be. Arriving a little bit early, right, so you can get your bearings on things. Coming prepared. Let's see. Stick with speaking about topics on hand when it's your turn. Yeah, don't go off on a tangent, right? And as a meeting host, if somebody is running that meeting, being able to be reined in, reviewing the topic ahead of time. I also think that having some grace for whoever is running the meeting, right? If you do start to go off topic and you get checked about that, don't hold that against the person who is running the meeting. They are just trying to keep everybody on topic, right? They are doing their job. Don't be disruptive or derail the discussion as well. Also not shutting down the discussion, like, oh, we don't need to talk about that. Let the host decide whether this is something that we need to talk about. Making notes for following up with questions, off-topic ideas for later. Yes, exactly. Because sometimes awesome things happen in a meeting, but you're like, that's not really what this meeting is about, but it is good and we should talk about it, just not right now. So making a list, one of the things that a lot of people refer to that as a parking lot, right? This is a parking lot. We're not forgetting about this content, but we are going to park it over here and we'll talk about it at a later date. And so as a meeting host, making sure that you are using, that as a tool, that parking lot as a tool. Keeping disagreements on topic and not personal. Yes. Confirming your action items and following through with those action items. Yes, those are definitely good things as a meeting attendee to be thinking about. All right. Attendees should be prepared, you should be engaged, and you should come with a collaborative spirit, right? We are here to accomplish a specific goal, an outcome. My meeting host wants that to happen. I want to be a team player and try and make that happen too. All right, here is a question. Do you need to take meeting minutes? And I did talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls of meeting minutes. Yes, no, or it depends. What do we think? It depends. All right, looks like most folks are on the it depends. We've got one person who says yes, definitively. I got two who are saying yes. I appreciate that nobody's like, no, meeting minutes are dumb and we should never do them. All right, so I'm going to make my case here for meeting minutes. I think you should always take meeting minutes. They don't have to be super formal, but you should always have meeting minutes. And the reason is that it is a record of what is discussed so that later on you can be like, what did we decide? That's important. It also records the action items so that everybody knows, because I have been in meetings where through nobody's fault, I thought somebody else was taking that action item. They thought I was taking it. Nobody took it, and then nothing got done, right? So it is a record of what the action items are, clarifying what they are, and also specifically assigning them to a person or people. It's going to avoid any of those misunderstandings, and then you can send those out. And again, those meeting minutes, they don't have to be pages and pages and pages. It can be really brief. It can just be the action items or just decisions that were made. But I do think that it's important to have that, because then that host can send those out. All right, how do you decide who should take the meeting minutes? How does that get assigned? Again, this is when you can type your answers in. So like I said, I feel like a lot of times it gets delegated to whoever the youngest person in the room is. Yeah, not the presenter. It's a lot to ask the person who is running the meeting to also be taking the minutes. That is generally not, unless you have a very, very small meeting where maybe like 2 or 3 people, is not generally a great idea for this to be the person running the meeting also is taking the minutes. Asking for a volunteer can be really helpful. Yeah. Does anybody want to volunteer for this? Assigning to staff if possible. If you have awesome administrative staff, that can be great. If you don't have awesome administrative staff, you do want to make sure that rotating within the group is also a great way. If you are in a little bit more formal group, you might have somebody who is an acting secretary for whatever your meeting is. That can be helpful. Rotating alphabetically, yeah, making sure everybody takes a turn can be helpful. Whoever has the lowest stake in the meeting can potentially work. I think a seasoned person, so somebody here said a seasoned person in the organization. And that was kind of my point, is that you want to make sure whoever is taking the meeting minutes does understand all of the parts and pieces of whatever the project or whatever the meeting goal is, so that the meeting minutes later on are useful, right? So they need to know who is in the meeting, and they need to understand what those action items are so that they can record things with enough detail. I think the other piece with this, with meeting minutes, is that you want to make sure that they do have enough detail, not too much detail. Like I said, that you're not a stenographer. And I think also establishing what if you are rotating within the group, having some established, like, these are the things that need to go into the meeting minutes. We need to record any action items. We need to record any decisions. We need to have a person assigned. If an action item is being written down, there needs to be a person that is assigned to that right now. Even if it's just that person is going to maybe do a little bit of research or do some inquiries, etc., and then get back to the group. Everything needs to have a person that is assigned to it. Otherwise, nobody's going to do it. It's not assigned to anybody. And again, the outcome of your meeting is not going to be nearly as effective or productive. All right, thanks everybody again for these answers. All right, productive disruptions, side conversations that are not frivolous. So sometimes we're going to have some side conversations that it's a productive discussion. People are accomplishing things. This is a good use of those 2 or maybe 3 people's time, but you've got 10 other people that are in the room that are just sitting there not engaged because this does not involve them in any way. So what can we do when a meeting starts to get off topic? What are some effective ways to kind of redirect things? Parking lot. Yep. The parking lot is a great tool, making sure that you have established, like, hey, I'm not saying that what you're talking about is not important. I'm not dismissing whatever it is that you're talking about. It is important. It's just not important right this second. And it could be that it's not important to this group at all. Like, it's only important to those 2 people. It could be that it's important to this group. It's just that it is further down the line. We don't need to talk about that right now. It is something we do need to consider, just not at this particular meeting. Yeah, trying to politely corral people back on topic. All right, people, we need to get back on topic. Yes. Also saying, hey, you 2 or 3 or whoever, you 2 need to set a time right now so that it doesn't get forgotten about. You 2 set a time right now. Talk about this after the meeting for 5 minutes and figure out, another time to talk about this. But we are going to move on with the agenda, right? So that way, those 2 folks, they do have an opportunity to continue that discussion later, but it doesn't derail your entire meeting. All right. How about engaging the group? So sometimes we've got folks who maybe are a little bit shy. Sometimes we might have folks who are maybe not so shy. What can we do to make sure that everybody gets a chance to talk? So I think that sometimes the bigger problem is encouraging people who maybe are more reluctant to share during a meeting to share. So what are some things that you might do to encourage discussion from attendees who might be a little bit shy, might be a little bit reluctant to share? And this might be somebody who's new to this group. It might be somebody who's new to the company or the organization or the agency. It might be somebody who is new to the industry, right? So they might have lots of experience in another career and they've shifted careers. Maybe they're going to be a little bit likely to share, what are some ways that you can encourage people to share? Hype them up. If a question lands in their well, yeah, like, hey, you have experience with this. What is your opinion? Or can you share something about this? That's a great way. Sending questions that you know are in their wheelhouse is a great way to encourage some discussion. I always appreciate your perspective. Do you have any thoughts? Yes, that's a great one, right? That letting people know, like, hey, I like it when you participate. I would like you to do it more. I need to know what you think. Mention something positive about them before asking their thoughts. Yeah, like, you know a lot about this. We're all kind of in the same vein here. Some other things that can be helpful. Anybody else have some thoughts here? So if you've got folks who maybe are a little bit more reluctant to share, some of that can be nerves, right? And one of the ways that you can help with that is to let people know ahead of time, right? Sending out that agenda and letting people know, like, hey, I need these people's thoughts about this. So they know that they are going to be asked in the meeting something, right? They have a little bit of time ahead of time to prepare, and it doesn't put people on the spot quite so much. So that can be really helpful, I think, because they have that little bit of time to prepare themselves, to come up with whatever it is that they're going to say um, beforehand. Yeah, sometimes feeding people can be a way, bribery can be very effective. If you've come to some of my in-person events, I often give away candy because I'm trying to get people to participate in things. Sometimes I usually use the trick of, if I have a big conference room, I will put more candy on the front tables than the back tables. Look for that at one of our future in-person events. As a way to try and get people to sit in the front, because nobody likes to sit in the front. It's not generally nobody's fighting over those seats, right? But yeah, letting people know ahead of time what it is that you're going to be asking of them, especially the larger the group is going to be, the more that you can let people know kind of what that's going to be, the better. Yeah, inviting people to sit closer, having an icebreaker can be really helpful, especially if it's a group that doesn't really know each other. To kind of build a little rapport, that can be helpful. If you are having a little bit of maybe everybody got there 10 minutes early, you are having a little bit of socialization before this meeting, making sure that those people who maybe are a little bit shyer are included in the conversation too. Making sure that they do feel welcome, especially if you've got maybe people who maybe they aren't shy, maybe they're just new. This is the first time that they've come to this meeting, making sure that those folks feel welcome. Yeah, wait for a genuine minute after asking a question. That silence is uncomfortable. Sometimes, yeah, just letting that silence kind of marinate a little bit can be very effective. Not filling in the dead air. That is, honestly, as a meeting facilitator, that can be one of the most difficult things, is to just allow dead air to continue. All right, so after the meeting, what should we do after our meeting to make things effective? We want to make sure that there is some follow-up. You want to follow up with the action items. You want to make sure people know, like, hey, Susan, this was assigned to you. If there were any decisions made, you want to make sure that that has also been communicated, especially to those folks who might be interested in the results of the meeting, but maybe either didn't have time to attend the meeting, or their presence wasn't actually really necessary, so they weren't there. If you told someone, I will follow up with you after the meeting, you need to follow up with them after the meeting. If there are going to be any future meetings, you want to make sure that those are set. I encourage everybody to try and set the date for a future meeting when you have everybody in the group. So encourage people to make sure that they bring their schedules with them so that you can do that. And like I said, any of those optional attendees, making sure that they get the information, especially if you told them that you would send that to them. All right, so you have attended a meeting. The meeting was great. Crickets, we have heard nothing after this meeting. How can you politely ask the host about action items, future steps, etc.? What are some ways that you can kind of prompt things to get moving again? Because I think we've also had that experience where, like, that was a great meeting, and then you leave and then you hear nothing and you're like, are we doing something now? What are we doing? Sending an email to the host. Yes. So sending an email, calling, stopping them in the hallway, something like that. Asking them, maybe asking them, uh, yeah, just to recap, what are our next steps? Just to recap, um, I understand that this was my responsibility. This was my action item coming out of that meeting. What did I, what timeline do you have for us to accomplish our action items? Maybe do you need any assistance with things if you haven't been assigned any action items? Is there an update? Is there a status update on this? I noted during the meeting that this was assigned to me. I'm ready to report what's next. I love that. That's a great one. Compliment the facilitation. Are there any notes or are there any follow-up for this meeting? Yeah. If it was a good meeting, make sure that you have something to say. But even if it was like, oh, this maybe wasn't the greatest meeting, there still might be some action items. And just, I want to clarify that this is my responsibility coming out of this meeting. All right, folks. I appreciate everybody's help with this. Let me put into the chat right now. There is a SurveyMonkey link that is in the Zoom chat right now for you. You want to grab that link. That link will be active for about 24 hours and you can fill that out. You're going to have an evaluation of today's session, so you can tell me what you thought. You're also able to give us some feedback about maybe other topics that you might want to know more about. Like I said, we're already planning some specific classes about meeting facilitation for early spring, late winter. And then this is also how you'll get your certificate of attendance. So I really appreciate everybody attending. If you grab that SurveyMonkey link, you are free to go. I'll stay on here for another 5-10 minutes in case you have any issues with that. But I really do appreciate everybody staying for the full hour. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, all of that to everybody. I hope that you are all safe and warm wherever you choose to celebrate this year, and hopefully you'll attend some of our future events. This is the link for our training page, ctt@mtu.edu/training. We have lots of stuff, and like I said, please suggest other topics, and we will try and do our best to make those things happen. But like I said, if you've grabbed the link, you're free to go. Thank you so much. This post will be recorded. You'll get a link to the recording. You'll also get a link to the YouTube page to see some of the other stuff we've been doing. But I really appreciate all of you guys and hope to see you soon.